Angela Merkel's a woman on deadline, you might say. The German chancellor in Ankara to bargain over billions in aid for refugees pledged by Europe. She needs Turkey and the EU to be singing from the same hymn sheet ahead of an important Brussels summit next week. And key March 13th regional elections in 3 German states. This as Merkel's popularity slides. One survey last week said 81% of citizens now feel that her government is not in control of the refugee crisis. There's another ticking time bomb, though. The tens of thousands of Syrians so far blocked from entering Turkey. They're fleeing a Russian-backed government offensive. What should Merkel be telling her hosts in Ankara? What should she be telling Vladimir Putin? What will she say to her EU partners next week? Today in the France 24 debate, we're wondering, can Merkel fix it? With us from Berlin, Nico Alanka, the Deputy Director of Political Consultants. Many thanks for joining us.
Good evening from Berlin.
We want to thank as well Yves Bertoncini, Director of the Jacques Delors Institute here in Paris. Nice to see you. Journalist George Kazolias is with us. And from London, former Turkish diplomat Mehmet Ogutku. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
Pleasure.
The France 24 debate where you can join the conversation. And you have on Facebook and Twitter our hashtag F24debate. Who's going to be taking in those refugees? Before we put the question to our panel, just an update. The border still closed with Syria. This as government forces move to within 25 kilometers of Turkey. And yet we can expect more displaced Russian air cover helping the Syrian army to take another key town near Aleppo. Over in Ankara, Germany's chancellor really laying the blame at Moscow's doorstep.
In the past days, we have become not just alarmed, but appalled by the human misery that has unfolded for tens of thousands of people, caused by predominantly Russian airstrikes.
Resolution adopted in December, which has also been adopted by Russia, the Security Council demands that all sides instantaneously cease attacks against civilians and civilian targets.
Nico Lange, Angela Merkel, unequivocal there. We'd seen in past weeks a bit of a thaw in the relationship between Russia and the EU. Would you say that now, with the latest offensive by the Syrian army, that we're back to what had been dubbed by some as a return to the Cold War?
I do not think that is especially helpful to draw comparisons to the Cold War. I think what we can see from Berlin is just a confirmation of what Angela Merkel frequently declared. The situation is very complex and will need a European solution and a European approach. It is not possible to solve this as Germany or as any other single country of the European Union alone. And what we see these days, I think, just confirms this position. We need a European approach to this crisis.
European approach, perhaps, but with the what's mattered a lot more in the past couple of days, more than those failed political talks, for instance, we saw in Geneva, are those Russian airstrikes, it seems.
It is very difficult to judge from Berlin. Maybe the colleague from Turkey or another colleague is more able to comment on the situation there. I can comment on the German situation where it is a high pressure now for the German chancellor to fight on different fronts with the peace talks in Geneva, with the dialogue with Russia, with the dialogue with Turkey, while in the domestic sphere, many people expect results in regards of the refugee situation here.
Yves Bertoncini, people, again, up until a couple of weeks ago, have been hoping that, okay, now we were all going to be able to tone it down, find a lasting solution for places like Ukraine, and there's more talks scheduled on that front as well. What did you think of the German Chancellor's strong words this Monday?
Well, she's absolutely right to say what she has said. She's absolutely right to go to Turkey because, of course, it's important to address the challenges at their roots, I would say, at the source. And so one of the challenges which can be addressed from Turkey is the challenge of refugee and massive influx of asylum seekers in Europe, because we all know that they come from Syria, part of them, not all of them, and of course from Syria to Turkey, and then from Turkey to the EU. So at least being there, again, not the first time in Ankara, she tries to insist on this part of the problem and try to fix it in the framework of the EU-Turkey action plan adopted last October. But of course, she's leading in this direction, because given the internal situation in Germany, the massive influx of asylum seekers in Germany, she has a personal interest in doing this. She has to fix this crisis, because she has said at the beginning, wir schaffen das, we're going to make it. So she has to fix this crisis not only in Germany, but also in Turkey. But having said this, there's another.
She has to fix it for Germany, or she has to fix it for Europe?
I think for Germany and for Europe, and we have to support her. And
so for you, is she going to Germany as the chancellor of her country or as the leader of the EU?
The leader of the EU, indeed, because as I've said, there is an EU-Turkey action plan. It has been adopted. There is, for example, a refugee facility for Turkey. We Europeans are going to support Turkey, sending 3 billion euros to Turkey, because many asylum seekers today are in Turkey. More than 2.5 million are in Turkey, less in Germany. But I would say the two countries welcoming the most part are precisely Turkey and Germany. And for this reason, of course, she's the leader of the EU. Just a quick point to say that on the other part of the problem, which is the situation in Syria, the military situation in Syria, the intervention of Russia, of course, the regional game around Syria. No, Germany is not the leader at the moment, but France could be more of a leader. But of course, the situation is particularly complex to be fixed.
All right. The Merkel's visit before she goes on Sunday, she meets with the French president, François Hollande, in Strasbourg, along with the speaker of the European Parliament, Martin Schulz. Those images there, George Cazolis, we're seeing from Sunday. Do you share Yves Bertoncini's point of view that she went to Ankara as the leader of Europe and she's legitimate to do so?
She's hardly the leader of Germany today. She's a lame duck prime minister. People, even in her own party, and especially in Bavaria, would like to see her replaced. This refugee crisis has completely destroyed her image, and those elections in March are extremely important, and the Alternative for Deutschland is really going up, and I think her own party has lost something like 8 points in the polls. So her own people are extremely worried. I think she's trying to save her skin, and she's trying to save her. She wants to show the German people, look, we got 1,100,000 people.
Right, but nobody else is going to Ankara, and there's the feeling
no, because she's the one who said, and I know the Germans don't like to hear this, but she's the one who said, come one, come all, and that's what they did. And as the German Minister for Development and Cooperation said, I think his name is Müller, said there are 10 million on their way, and the German people are scared. So I think she is in a very, very weak position, and she's gone to Erdogan to try to save her skin.
Mehmet Oguktu, your thoughts on that? Was it the Chancellor of Germany or the leader of Europe who showed up in Ankara this Monday?
Well, I'm very glad that it was Angela Merkel who went to Ankara rather than someone from the European Commission. And because she recognizes how delicate and serious the problem is there. And where we are today is the outcome of the West inaction for the past 5 years. It hasn't happened yesterday. Therefore, we have to take this responsibility. I mean, we are not only talking about, 30,000 Syrian refugees piling up in front of Turkish border. This is a problem going on for 5 years, and the West has not done anything. Then Russia came into the picture, made it even worse. And also Europe, one of the speakers was talking about the need for a European approach. Yes? And if you have European approach, we are damned. Look at Ukraine. Look at what happened in Georgia, South Ossetia, Abkhazia. and Crimea, annexation of Crimea. And tomorrow, you will hear about Kazakhstan, Baltics, even North Sea here in UK. So I think Russia needs to be given a clear message from Europe or NATO, whatever. And of course, Russia is not responsible what is the situation in Syria. But because of Russia, I think the talks, peace talks in Geneva, collapsed. I think all of us agree. No. Now, recent UN also report shows that Russia was responsible for most of the Assad-led forces' inhuman practices. So here, I think we have to look at what the solution is. You cannot duck away the solution on the shoulders of Turkey only. Turkey already received 2.7 million refugees from Syria. This is close to the population of Berlin, which is 3.5 million.
And let me ask you on that point, Mehmet Aguktu, let me ask you on that point. What's going to happen to those that are fleeing Aleppo right now? Are they going to be let into Turkey?
Well, I mean, Turkish government, I think, made it quite clear that they are not going to be received right away. But if they are under the threat of death, and because of the Russian aircraft bombing or the weather conditions, of course, Turkey will open the border, as we did so far with the Kurds in Kobani and in KRG in the past, and with Afghanis. So we'll open the borders. I don't think that there will be any problem on that. But we don't want Europe to tell us that, well, in order to protect the EU external borders, and we want to preserve Schengen arrangement, please take all responsibility. We'll just pay you 3 billion euro. And I will suggest that I think Turkey is, 80 million population. If we raise 100 euro per person, I think we can give Europe, if they need, 8 billion euro so that they can take all these refugees. I think it is very inappropriate for Europe to use this each time. We gave you 3 billion. It hasn't come yet, this money. But when it comes, it can only pay for 3 months minimum wage for 2.7 million Syrian refugees. So it's not a financial issue. Here, we have a humanitarian disaster. This is the making of not only Syrians, but us, the Turks, and Europe, and US. Therefore, there is a common responsibility. You cannot just say, well, open your back doors to the refugees and close the front doors. No, it doesn't work that way. There is a common responsibility here we have to share. It's not about 3 billion euro.
Let me first turn to Nico Lange. First of all, your reaction to what Mehmet said about him being happy that it's Angela Merkel and not the EU commissioner who's in town.
Well, first of all, Angela Merkel, of course, is a very strong European leader. And despite critics and despite what I find irritatingly negative comments in many parts of the European press, she commands a whopping majority in her parliamentary group and within the German parliament. And if you see Germany over the last years, one of the reasons why Angela Merkel has such a strong position is that the German economy is running, the labor market is running very well, and she has stable political situation with her government. By the way, elections are on in 2017, so the question is not whether Angela Merkel is in a weak position domestically or not. The question is she just a lonely actor on a scene where everybody is making comments, or is she a European leader where other European nations are helping in solving the problem? And I think this is a crucial time for making decisions now within the next days.
So is she all by herself? Is she all by herself when she goes to Ankara?
Well, she is certainly not only the German chancellor, but she is the German chancellor who keeps up the idea of solving European and global problems on a European level despite domestic pressure and despite irritatingly populist, nationalistic discourses in many countries of the European Union. So she is German and European at the same time, because to act as a European Union, I think, is in the interest of Germany.
Yves Bertoncini, I sensed a little bit of irony in the voice of Mehmet Aguktu when he suggested a fundraiser for Turks so that the Europeans can welcome the refugees. But the sense is that the Turks feel as though they're being patronized by the EU.
Maybe they're partly right, but the only thing I want to underline is that there is an EU-Turkey joint action plan It has been signed by both the Europeans and Turkey. So Mrs. Merkel is acting alongside the provision of this EU-Turkey action plan.
So this 3 billion euros, why hasn't it been dispersed yet?
Because it has been decided only last week, the way it would be financed. And by the way, now that the EU has decided to put 1 billion, but the other countries will put two more billions in the course of the next 2 years, starting now. But who is contributing the more? It's Germany. Once again. So, second point, Germany, within this framework, accepted by the Turkish authorities, is the most legitimate country. And that's why Mrs. Merkel is a leader, because not only they finance, but also they have welcomed a massive number of the refugees welcomed in Europe. They have decided to do so. But, if we make a ranking, number one is Turkey, indeed, because the refugees are trying to stay within their region of origin. But who is number two? It's Germany. So it's a de facto leadership. But of course, having said this, there are internal concerns for Mrs. Merkel. She has lost ground. She needs to regain some popularity. But I just want to say that with 46% of satisfaction, 46% of satisfaction in Germany, she's still very, very high. I would just like to underline that Mr. Hollande is ranking at 15% of satisfaction. So with 46%, she could afford spending a bit of her political capital, if I may say.
I don't know where to start. The countries backing the Islamists haven't taken any refugees in the Middle East. So, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, they haven't taken any. And they're the ones who are fostering this war. And I have to say, if it wasn't for the Russians and their intervention, we wouldn't have peace talks today. We lost 4 years of peace talks. And who is holding Aleppo? Al-Nusra. That's Al-Qaeda. Those are the people the Turks are supporting. We should be applauding Damascus taking Aleppo away from Al-Nusra. They're the enemy. They're the people we're supposed to be fighting.
And the bombing of civilians?
Look, if it was Assad in the place of al-Nusra, we would say that Assad is using them as human shields. Now, the people who are really complaining about these civilians, because they are atrocities, said nothing when the Marines leveled Fallujah, said nothing when B-52s carpet-bombed Afghanistan. So this is just pure hypocrisy.
All right,
the only way to solve this refugee crisis is end the war in Syria. And to do that, these countries have to stop supporting these Islamist rebels. There are no moderate rebels in Syria.
All right, we're going to pick up on that point when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the François and Kat debate.